All right, so it's been a little bit since we've had the announcement that The Last of Us Online has been officially canceled. And since then, things have been coming out about the game. Specifically, the game devs and people who've worked on it have been starting to voice their opinions and their experience on working on that game online on Twitter. And essentially, you can kind of sum it up like this. The game was really good, which adds to my frustration. And so I want to dive into specifically what some of these game devs are saying, specifically one, and kind of go over like what the heck happened. Because when you're able to piece all of the different things together, along with the leaks and information we have, you can paint a better picture. And it's really frustrating. And so with that being said, let's dive into what the creators of The Last of Us Online have been saying since its cancellation. So we have some of the normal tweets of people being like, I loved every minute of working on this project. I love The Last of Us Online. I'm so sad that this isn't releasing. You have stuff like that, which you can't really gain a lot of insight from, because you read something like that and you're like, did they just have a good time, but they understand why it got canceled? Did they love it because they actually thought it was a great game? You have no idea. But actually, one of the main game designers went to Twitter and specifically kind of clarified some of this stuff for us, because you hear those like, oh, I loved working on this game, but that could mean anything. And specifically has kind of let us know it's because the game was good. And so one of the lead game designers said this. They said, I had more fun playing this game than any other multiplayer game before or since. It's never easy having a game canceled, but I'm so proud of my studio and everything we accomplished on this project. Big shout out to the combat and dialogue teams. And so that's what's been said. And so reading that, it's very frustrating, and we've actually heard this from multiple leakers that the game was really good, that it wasn't a question of the quality, that this multiplayer experience was actually great. And the reason why I never really doubted that was because Factions was so simple and so basic, but so much fun and so addictive. And I never doubted Naughty Dog in making this online game and making a great game, that it's very rare that they put out something that is subpar. Even for those who don't like The Last of Us 2 and the story, still like the gameplay. That the issue for them wasn't the gameplay, it was the story decisions, which is fair. It's not going to work for everybody. And so I always felt like this game would be great, and apparently it was. To have one of the top game developers after this game's been canceled, so they're not making money off of this, because when someone's hyping up a game before it comes out, you got to take it with a grain of salt, because they're going to make money off of it. What are they going to tell you? This is the worst game I've ever made, but I hope you buy it. They're not going to say it. But when it's been canceled, like, they've got no reason to kind of pump the tires of this thing. And for them to say that this is the most fun they've ever had in a multiplayer game ever, since before making it and after making it, man, that's such a blow. It honestly, as like, I'm a hardcore Factions fan. I love Factions on The Last of Us, and to hear that is so discouraging. And so I want to dive into next why this doesn't make any sense. And the main reason is that it was just a year ago that they officially announced this to us and got us hyped. And here's the thing. We know for a fact from Neil and others that The Last of Us Online Factions 2 has been in development since 2014. That as soon as they started making Part 2, they also started making Factions. And around the time of The Last of Us Part 2's release date, Naughty Dog decided, hey, what's happening with Factions is actually so incredible that we should make it its own game. It wasn't part of the online push from Sony that you've kind of seen, where they had a bunch of developers being pushed to make online games. This wasn't that actually Naughty Dog was just pumped about what was happening with Factions, that they thought it could be its own game. And so this has been in development for almost 10 years. And a year ago, they were at the point of confidence in this game that they were willing to officially make really public remarks on it at the Summer Game Fest and show us concept art and let us know, like, hey, in a year from now, we're going to let you know more about this. We're going to show you some gameplay footage, some of that stuff. Until then, hold tight. And so the cancellation of this doesn't make any sense. that they didn't like to. What Neil said, honestly, is a bunch of BS. To sit there and say that, oh, we didn't know that we were going to become an online service development team, that's not true. That you don't develop something like this for 10 years and then in the 10th year be like, oh, wait a second, this means we're going to have to support it. They're not that stupid. And to think that they're that dumb is naive. That it's very clear that the leaks that we heard were true. And specifically, here's where things took a turn. So last year, they were pumped. And up until this point, Naughty Dog has had full confidence in this project that they made a game that apparently was a ton of fun. But again, that wasn't what caused the cancellation of this game. The main primary turning point happened this year when Sony decided to hire Bungie to come in and analyze it. And essentially Bungie, ironically, looked at this game and said, yeah, this game's great, but you're not going to be able to squeeze enough money out of the consumer. And so Sony then went to Naughty Dog and said, hey, Bungie thinks that we could make way more money on this game if you guys add microtransactions, if you add seasons, if you add events, and those kinds of things, and that's what we want you to do. And so Naughty Dog kind of sat on it and thought about it. And here's the part where Neil is not really deceiving you, is that it is true that they didn't realize when they started this game that it was going to become a live service thing that they would have to put all of their resources into for years, and that it would require so much energy from the team that they wouldn't really be able to release things like The Last of Us Part 3, like the new IP that they're working on, like DLCs, that they would be stuck and handcuffed by Sony into serving this live service, live multiplayer game kind of thing, that they essentially wanted to milk the money out of players. And that was never Naughty Dog's original intent. And Naughty Dog wanted to make a game that you could buy once and that you would be able to maybe get some cosmetic stuff for it, maybe purchase some of that, but it wasn't going to have seasons. It wasn't going to have all these different things. It wasn't going to have different stories that would release and DLCs, that it was just going to be a standalone kind of thing that would exist on its own, much like Factions has. But Bungie convinced Sony that they needed to push them to essentially take this really creative multiplayer Factions 2 experience that could stand on its own and that you could charge players once and they would just have the game, and turn it into something like Fortnite and Call of Duty. And it's in that Naughty Dog then went, well, in order to do what you're saying, Sony, we would have to then become a live service developer. It would require so much energy and time for us to do what you're wanting and for us to milk all this money from players that this would be all that we do. And that's when it got dropped. That's when it got canceled. And it wasn't because the game wasn't good. It wasn't because the game got away from them and they were too dumb to realize that an online game requires people working on it. And it wasn't because they didn't believe in the project anymore. All of those things were still true. It's simply because Sony wanted to milk the money and they wanted to do this live. They really were wanting to push these big multiplayer Fortnite, Call of Duty kind of experiences. A bunch of game developers have been no, we're not doing that. Naughty Dog specifically was we can't do this. This is going to take away from us making the games that our fan base really want. And so that's why this thing got canceled. And it's so depressing to hear that this game was actually really good, that it sounds like a masterpiece, that it sounds like it would have been an incredible experience, and that the game developers were like, this is the most fun I've had playing a multiplayer game. And from all the test people that we've heard leaks from, that much has always been true. That people have always been saying that this game is actually insanely fun. And so this is really depressing. And to be honest, I think a lot of the qualities we would have seen in this game are being seen in the roguelike mode. I imagine that a lot of the things that we're going to see in that no return mode for the Part 2 remaster are winks at stuff that would have happened in this online game. And because those ideas died, essentially, I think they kind of just made a quick roguelike mode and put a lot of the concepts that they could take from this online game and put it in that roguelike mode. And it looks great. And that's the part that's again frustrating, is I've been waiting for almost 10 years for a sequel to Factions, and we've been promised it, and Naughty Dog wanted to give us it, but Sony wanted to get greedy and milk it, and they wanted to turn it into Fortnite, they wanted to turn it into Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and to be honest, I'm happy that Naughty Dog didn't do that. As much as it pains me, as much as I wish that we could just get that game, I would much rather have The Last of Us Part 3. I would much rather have a Joel and Tommy DLC. I would much rather have a new IP from them, or another Uncharted game, or a remaster of Jak and Daxter. I would way rather have that than just a online service game, and that's what we get for the PS5 until the PS6 when they can finally make Part 3. Would way rather get those now than later, and so I understand the decision, but it's frustrating. I can't imagine what it's like to be Neil, to be on that team, and to see what happened and see 10 years of your work go down the drain, and to know you had a great game and that some random developer like Bungie was hired to come in and assess your work and then essentially tell Sony if they think that your game's good enough to make money and squeeze money out of people. So frustrating. But with that being said, I want to know what you guys think. So head down to the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts. Are you depressed that this game got canceled like I am? Do you understand why they did it? Are you happy that Naughty Dog kind of stood their ground and didn't just surrender to Sony? Let me know in the comment section down below. Maybe one day this will be like the Snyder Cut and we'll get to see this game. But sadly, it seems like it'll never see the light of day. So until next time, guys, I will see you in the next one.